Hi crafty friends, I'm Tricia Morris at Club Scrap, and this is the assembly workshop for the Renewal Card Kit. There are some truly lovely cards we're going to create with this beautiful mellow set of materials. So I'm just going to go ahead and set aside all of these beautiful embellishments. Make sure you have a copy of the instructions handy, and then we're going to sort the paper in the order in which we'll be using it. This is the tradition here at Club Scrap, so we're just going to dive right in and get started. Now there's something unique and unusual about this collection, but first we're going to start out by trimming 2 sheets of 8.5 by 11 mint paper. This paper has a beautiful laid finish. You can kind of see this grain or this texture on the surface of this paper. It's really beautiful. And then next there are several different types of shades of brown and green here, so I'll help you sort through that. Find the brown paper that has this gorgeous felt finish on it, and then there's another paper we're calling slate. It's just sort of this blue-green shade. Next, find a 12 by 12 of the green parchment. So this, of course, has that parchment texture to it, and there's just, I believe, one of them. Find another slate. Then a brown parchment. There are 2, so just make sure you grab one of them. Next, find the print. We're going to put that face down on our pile. Then we'll find another sheet. This is a new color we haven't found yet before. This is the green, so it's like in between the slate and the green parchment is this other medium green. Then another brown parchment, a print, and there's only 1 sheet of cut aparts. Normally there are 2 12 by 12 pieces, but in this case we only needed 1 to finish all the cards, so that's kind of exciting. Okay, let's flip everything back over so those 2 8.5 by 11 sheets of mint are on the top of the pile, and we're going to do some very simple cuts. I'm using, as always, my favorite trimmer, the Fiskars guillotine style trimmer, and this style is certainly the best for this efficient method. Okay, we're going to place this 8.5 by 11 into the trimmer vertically and cut it 4 1/4. Stack the 2 pieces together, and we'll trim them horizontally at 9. And set aside the large 9-inch piece to be scored. And the small piece, believe it or not, is a scrap, so we'll just set those aside. We'll repeat that for the second sheet of this 8.5 by 11 mint. So that's a vertical cut at 4 1/4. Stack the 2 pieces and trim horizontally at 9. This gets set aside to be scored, and this last pair is a scrap. Okay, now I've moved on to page 2 of my instructions. We're going to work with the brown and the slate at the same time. These papers, as far as the grain direction, it does not matter, so you don't have to worry about finding grain direction. We'll talk about that on the next card, our next step. All right, so this is going to be trimmed at 10 1/4 and 6 1/4. Then rotate and cut at 9 and 4 1/2. Put both of these panels into pocket B of your organizer. Now, if you are using Club Scrap's accordion pocket file organizer, this is a great assistant to help us stay organized and keep everything close by. If you don't have an organizer, let us know. We'll try to help you get what you need to make one. But for now, just set aside 3 piles, A, B, and C. So this is going to be used on card set B. I'll file that, and then take the next rectangle, and we'll trim horizontally at 4 1/4. File this panel into pocket A, and we've created some scraps I'll add to the others. Next, we have a 4 by 12 that needs to be trimmed horizontally at 6. And then these go into card set C. There is a 1 3/4 by 12. Let's trim that horizontally at 11 and 5 1/2. We'll place these, all 4 of them that match, into pocket A, and there are 2 little scraps that will remain. Next, we get to trim 4 pieces of paper the same way. Let's load them in 2 at a time. So I'll take this green parchment, we'll check the grain. Hold it by this edge, that seems kind of stiff to me. Hold it by this one, it's very droopy. That's how I want it to go into the trimmer. Drooping top to bottom. Check each side. This droops. The reason for this placement is because eventually we'll be folding the paper in half in that direction, and we want it to be a nice clean fold. Okay, so let's trim first at 11 3/4 and 7. Rotate and cut at 10. That wasn't too bad. This is a base for card set C. I'm going to set it aside to be scored. I'm not going to file it quite yet. And then we'll trim this other strip horizontally at 6. Place this in pocket C. And then there are 2 little scraps that you'll need to just set those aside. Now we'll take this piece. We got quite a bit of trimming to do here. We'll start at 10 1/4. And 6 3/4. This goes in pocket C. This next rectangle, place it in pocket A. And then you should have 2 little pieces. These are 1 3/4 by 4 3/4 right now. We're going to trim them horizontally at just 4 1/4. Just take a tiny little piece off that. This goes in pocket B. And we did manage to accumulate just a few tiny little scraps. We'll set those aside. We get to do that twice more now with the brown parchment. I'm checking my grain top to bottom, and then my print. Check the grain top to bottom. All right, repeat. 10 3/4, I'm sorry, 11 3/4, 7, rotate, 10. This we score. Take the strip, the 2 by 7, we're going to trim horizontally at 6, pocket C, and a scrap. We'll set that aside. Next piece, we trim at 10 1/4 and 6 3/4. Large piece goes in pocket C. The smaller rectangles, pocket A. We trim this little guy just at 4 1/4, so it's a nice easy cut. Pocket B. More scraps. We'll set those. I'm just going to slide those out of the way. Okay, that's it for step 3. Now we're moving on to step 4. We're going to do this with 2 sheets. So I'll take the green and then make sure it dips left to right this time. So this is different than we did for the previous 4. And the brown, we want it to dip left to right. As a reminder, here's your arrow. So that's how we want the paper to eventually fold. Okay, our first cut, 8 1/2. Rotate, 11 and 5 1/2. You just made 4 card bases. Those will be set aside to be scored. And then there is this 1 by 8 1/2 piece. You can use that as an option, but I'll put it in my scrap pile for now. And let's trim at this next 3 1/2 by 12 strip. We'll cut horizontally at 9 and 4 1/2. Now rotate this 4 1/2 and cut it 3 1/4. And this goes in pocket C. We're going to repeat that with the other 4 1/2 by 3 1/2. We'll trim vertically at 3 1/4. Just take a 1/4 of an inch off that. Pocket C again. These other, like, not quite squares, those also go in pocket C. And we just have a bunch of little tiny scraps here to get out of the way. All right, 1 print left before we get to the cut aparts. Grain direction matters. We want it to dip easily from the top to the bottom of your trimmer. We'll cut at 8. Now rotate. This is kind of tricky. Cut at 9. Rotate again, so it's back to vertical, and we'll cut on the even numbers. So we're currently at 8, slide to 6, then 4, and 2. Okay, these pieces get scored, so we'll set these aside. And now you have this rectangle here. We'll trim horizontally at 7 and 3 1/2. these 2 small rectangles, pocket C, and a scrap. Now we just have this last strip here. This is 4 by 12 right now. We'll trim at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. All 4 of these rectangles go in pocket B, and set aside the scrap. Now I know I'm going at a pretty good clip here, and if you are watching this on YouTube, there is a little gear button on the lower right side of your screen. If you click that, I think it says HD on it even. If you click it, you can slow me down. Like it'll say speed, adjust it to like 0.5 or 0.75 to slow me down to your pace. And eventually, I promise you'll probably get to the point where you can keep up just fine. It's a skill that you develop over time and practice. Okay, so let's take this cut apart sheet and put the words "so very sorry" up in the right. And we will cut at 11. Next, slide down to 7 3/4 and 4. That's a nice easy one. I'm trying to align these registration marks with the edge of my blade as well. Now we have cuts, I think every 1.5 inch. So 10 1/2, 9, 7 1/2, 6, 4 1/2, 3, and 1 1/2. Wow, that's a lot of little cuts there. Let's see where these go. The distribution map for the cut aparts will always be here on that first page, and we'll put that in pocket B. Then take the next strip, we'll place it in the trimmer so that the words "Happy Birthday" are on the right. So this will be upside down here. We'll cut at 10, 7 1/2, 5, 2 1/2. Gather up the 4 panels that are the same size, and they're all going to go into pocket A. And then we have this little guy to deal with. We'll place it so "Happy Birthday's" on the left, trim at 2 3/4 and 1 3/4. Okay, so "Happy Birthday" goes in A, and these other 2 little ones go in C. Next, make sure "Congratulations" is on the right. We'll cut at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. You have 4 rectangles here, and they all go in pocket C. And a little "Congratulations," that's for pocket A. Finally, one little guy left. I think this is going to be cut at 9, 6, and 3. Yes, 9, 6, and 3. Okay. So the "so very sorries" go into pocket A, and the "happy birthdays" go in C. So again, if you forgot where any of those go, or if you got behind, you can definitely follow the letters on the document to find out what goes where. I'm going to get rid of my trimmer now and exchange it for a score pal. Now here are all the pieces I'd set aside to be scored, so I'll try to help you tackle them in the order that they are. Honestly, the scoring instructions are right in with the trimming instructions, but I like to separate the tasks since it involves 2 different activities. These simply get scored in half, so currently they're 9 inches wide. Let's score at 4 1/2, just horizontally, and I am scoring with the printed side facing up. So horizontally at 4 1/2. And then eventually it'll be used in card set B. So I'm going to go ahead and file that. The next pile I have here is a 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 card base. So we'll score horizontally at 4 1/4. If you're using a score pal, this measurement is so common. There's an asterisk there, and that's because it's just basically a standard invitation size. And all of these will be used in pocket A. Okay, and now we have a simple 10 by 7 here. We'll place it in horizontally, print side up if you're scoring a print, and score at 5. Okay, this will be used in card set C. Finally, we have these little mint panels. These are going to be scored at 6. All 4 of them just scored horizontally at 6. And as I do that, an explanation. I was going to be using this, potentially this card kit on my expo tour of 2020, which never happened. And all of these card structures are possible to be made without the use of a score pal, since I generally don't bring those on the road with me, and my students don't have them. So this is used in card set B. And let's get assembling. Now, it's my tradition to just walk you through the assembly of one of the cards in each structure, because all 4 cards of each style will be assembled in the same exact way. All of this stuff just flew out of my pocket. Oh, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Okay, I'm just going to take a second and gather my wits while I fold these card bases in half. Sometimes when I'm folding a bunch of cards at the same time, I just crease with my fingertip, and then I burnish all 4, in this case, at the same time, just by using my bone folder. Now let's lay these out in the order in which they'll be assembled. So we have 2 horizontal in the green, or in the parchment actually, and 2 vertical in the green. We try to mix it up as far as horizontal and vertical. And now for our backgrounds, we're going to place a green parchment here, a slate panel here, a brown parchment, and then a print. Next, we're going to take a strip and just kind of run it across. So this one is the slate, and we have that beautiful brown felt finish. Another slate on this one. We're basically just shuffling the colors, and you can shuffle however you want to shuffle. Now, in the case of these 2 vertical cards, we're going to add an extra brown panel and an extra slate panel to each of those. The other 2 do not have that spare panel. Now for the serious time. There's no good card for this, and that is paired with So Very Sorry. And I am so very sorry we even need these cards, but I have used them and already. I mean, I've already sent some of these out, and it's nice to have a card like this every once in a while when you really just don't have the words. This gets a congratulations. Here's my happy birthday. Okay. The assembly of these cards is very, very basic. I'm going to share a couple of little alignment tips for you on how to use the grid ruler to help us make a professional looking card. Now on my samples, I actually ran this panel through an embossing machine to give it a little bit of texture, and that really did add a lot. So if you have an embossing folder with texture and a machine that you can use, great. Next, to attach the panel, I am finding the 0 center of my card base, so that's going to give me a 2 3/4 inch reading on each side. Then I need to figure out, let's see, how many, I need to be 3/8 of an inch away from the bottom of my card. So that's 3 cubes on my grid ruler. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Then I'm 3 cubes in on each side with this panel. I have adhesive on the panel, so I can just now lay it down, and it's perfectly centered. I always got to double check too to make sure I'm not, that the card opens on the correct side. Then for this, I'm going to take some of this ribbon. I'll stretch across enough to cover and a little bit more, and then take the ribbon and just wrap the ends around to the back of the strip and adhere with tape. Next, I'll apply adhesive to the strip. And I'm going to use my grid ruler again. And if you have any size of our grid rulers, they will all work with this type of thing. I'm just going to pick a random line here. From the top, I'll attach this. I'm going to go up a little bit, maybe like an inch from the top edge of the card. That way I can rest this against the ruler's edge and make sure it's level, which tends to be a challenge of mine. Finally, I have some really pretty jute. This is in a natural color. And I'm going to take one of these fun little tassels and thread some jute onto the tassel ring. I'll guesstimate kind of where I want the tassel to land, and then I'm going to tie the tassel onto the jute. Next, I'll trim the thread, and all I need to do is wrap the end of the jute around to the back of the card, or of this sentiment panel, that is. Kind of where I want that to be. just tape the ends down, just like we did with the ribbon. If you happen to have some of our handy foam adhesive circles, I do like to add those, and I'm chintzy, so I cut them in half and put the straight edge aligned with the straight edge of the cut apart. Then you can just easily peel, that case, the whole thing went with it, peel away the tab, which, ugh, I love that. I love that there's a tab. If you want, you can eyeball this if you want. I have a narrow margin here, and two, if it interests you, you can ink the edges with earth to add a little bit as well. But this placement, if you were to have added texture to this panel, would give you some nice, just a nice eye-catching feel to it. Then we can put our "so very sorry" text on the inside of the card. One thing I've been doing a lot of lately is, like, if I have like a little scrap, like I do in this case, I'll take it and attach it to the inside and then anchor my sentiment with the scrap. Oftentimes when I'm done making the cards, I have no scraps left because I've used them all either on the inside or outside of the card. Like I could even just maybe grab this and trim a little of this scrap and add it. Like, the world is your oyster. You could add this little print since it doesn't make an appearance on the front. Oh, I like that. See what I mean? There's a lot that you can do with those little scraps. So I tend to not throw them away until I'm completely finished with the making of all of the cards. Let's take a look at all of the cards in this set. So this is the one we made together. And you can see I just added a leafy background. If you had a gecko background, that would be gorgeous. And then there's the sentiment on the inside. Here I added the leafy background to the slate. Same assembly. Same assembly here too. The exception is just placement. I got a little creative so I could see more of the print, put this more to the upper portion of the card base, and kept this centered. You want to make sure it's up high enough so that this doesn't hang beneath the base of the card. That's the main primary reason for the placement. Here the same, I added some texture to this as well, and a little bit of ink to the edges. So if I were you, I'd set aside these other pieces that are going to be assembled in the same way. Keep it with the original sample that you just made, and we'll move on to set B. I'm not exactly sure if I get everything back into the B pocket after my little spill earlier, but we'll sort it out, right? Okay, just take a second and fold along the score line that you've made on each of these 4 1/4 by 9, I believe, panels, and you can do the same trick where you just use the tip of your finger to make the crease, stack everything up into one pile, and burnish all 4 card bases at once. Okay, then I am going to turn to page 4 of my instruction document, and we'll distribute the card bases, which are just not folded. They're just a single piece. What I like about this formula basically is that I could make, let's see, where is this located? In step 2, I'm making the bases in the brown and slate for card set B. So if you do this style with a partial flap type situation, you can get more card out of less paper. Not sure if that makes any sense, but mathematically it was really beneficial. Okay, then we also have these strips that we pre-scored, the 9 by somethings, and these just get folded again, bury the bump of the score line or the raised portion of the score onto the inside, and distribute 1 to each card base. Each card will also receive a printed panel that covers the left flap of the card. That's kind of nice. And then each card will receive a mat that fits on top of this printed area. So I believe that's the green parchment, then slate, brown parchment, and look, it's a print on a print. To solve that, you can just flip that over to the plain side and suddenly you have an ivory panel. Then friends like you mean more every year. And the inside is going to be the happy birthday. Same for the second card. Friends like you mean more every year. I thought this was going to be a really nice, useful saying. Also a happy birthday paired with that. Sending well wishes your way with a thinking of you, and then sending you love at this difficult time with heartfelt sympathy. Same thing, we'll stack these 3 prepared tiles together and set them aside, and we'll assemble this one together. I do this quite a bit. If I lose my train of thought, I forget and add this to my base panel before attaching my side fold. And you can decide if you want this to be upper, mid, lower, however you want this to come out. I'm just going to go with upper. That needs to be attached to the back of the card. And to save a little time, I've done this. I've done this a time or two. I'm just going to put the adhesive across the whole works, and that will just trap everything down between the card base and the panel. Okay, same is true here for inking, texturing. You can do a lot, or you can just do as much as we're doing right now, and nothing is required and nothing is off limits. Okay, two, I just want to mention I've got all these scraps around, so if you want to add more color, if you want to add just some of these little strips, that can really add a lot, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so on the front we can introduce another color. In this case it's the green parchment. I'll center that onto the strip and then add Friends Like You Mean More Every Year to the front. Oh, I was supposed to do a couple of things before I attached all this. Okay, and then we have a happy birthday going on the inside. Here we go. I don't know what time it is for you, but it's getting late. Okay, one thing that I did was took this beautiful satin ribbon, cut it in half, and then made a loop. Now, just take a small section of tape. I'm gonna just carefully remove this now. Oh, look, it comes right off. That's good. And we can tape this to the back center. So that loop sort of indicates pull up here. Something exciting is going to happen if you do that. The other thing I did this time is take one of these adorable little coin charms, and we'll tie one onto the jute. That jute is so handy. I spec it a lot because I use it. It just works so nice. And then I'll thread another one of these adorable mini tassels, and I'm going to do the same thing. So tie it on. I found that just works the best. Just directly tie the charm and then tie the tassel. So my goal was to get them tied sort of next to each other, but not on top of each other, if you know what I mean. You can do a little trim, give that tassel a little haircut. I think, honestly, the reason, now that hindsight is 20/20 here, the reason I brought this up to the higher portion of the card base was so that the tassel didn't hang it too long again past the base of the card. So trim this jute, grab some tape, bring that jute around to the back, secure that there. Lots of tape on the back of this little strip. Nice. And then I will add some more adhesive to this and center that. Oh, isn't that just sweet? Without anything added to this, it's elegant. It can go either way as far as age or sex. I just think it's a beautiful card. And we'll set this sample aside with the others from set B, and I'll grab everything for the final set. Oh, before we move on, I forgot to show you the remaining cards in the set. So these are the two that we made together. And again, you can see that the coin and the tassel are attached to these cards. It's separate entities, and that I think is what works best. I added a little bit of ink to the edges of the panels, and looks like these are assembled exactly the same way. So there you go, 4 cards, easy peasy. Just my number one tip is don't forget to attach this strip to the back of the panel before you center it onto the card base. Now I'm going to turn to page 5 of my instructions. Everything's out of pocket C. One of the things you'll notice about this set is that there are tons and tons of pieces in the pocket. I love layering, and this is layering at its finest, my friends. I'll take a moment and just fold these card bases in half. Next, we'll distribute the parchment for our first horizontal, then the slate, then a vertical with the green parchment, and a vertical with the print. You have so many layers, I think it would be wise to just sort of stack things up, and we'll just layer from the largest to the smallest. So let's find a green parchment to layer on this, brown parchment to go onto the slate, and always you can mix this up any way you wish. Okay, then we've got a print on top of the green and the slate on top of the print. another panel to each card. Okay, so let's go with the slate and then a brown. I just love this brown paper. The texture is divine. Another slate and another brown. Now, all 4 of these cards have a skinny panel to go with them. I simply forgot to include one of the panels onto the cards, and that was this one right here. So if you don't see it on the card, that's because it's not there, because I'm human and I forgot to attach it. Okay, more panels. Do you believe it? Okay, how about a parchment there, then that medium green, and another medium green, and another parchment. And next, even more panels. So we'll go with this medium green here, and then a parchment, and then a print, and a print again. Lots going on there with these layers. We haven't even distributed the sentiments yet. Okay, so wrinkles, wrinkles, loved, loved. I love this quote, by the way. So now we have a happy birthday going here, and you've got this going here. And we found these really cool leaf-shaped tags, and each card here gets 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. Each of these cards also receives a beautiful bamboo charm. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to assemble like this last card, and I'll walk you through some of the tips to assemble the first 2, but I want to show you again that unique way of using a ribbon that I did here on this one. Okay, so to start, we have a lot of beautiful panels to work with. The first panel, I think, creates a small enough margin around the card base that we can eyeball this successfully without the help of a grid ruler. And then for this next one, I added it just in the upper right corner. And this is so I can have room to place the leaves, the leaf tag. So I'm leaving 1/8 of an inch on the top and on the right. Now, before we attach anything else, I'm going to just work with this portion. Oh, I guess I can go ahead and attach my green parchment border strip here. Make sure you're about 1/2 inch from the edge. Okay, then we can still even go ahead and attach our printed panel. When you add this, do it to the upper portion of this panel. We want this area open. It's going to serve a purpose. We can add our sentiment, "You are strong," and so on. Okay, now we're going to get some ribbon. I've been using the green. I used all the types of ribbon here, but the green I'm using now. So I'm going to fold it in half and measure it so that the loop of the ribbon lands at the middle of the card and that the ends extend past the edge of the card, and trim it to that length. Then take a second ribbon, open this up if you want, and create a second ribbon of the same length. Okay, take one ribbon again, fold it in half, center the loop back onto the card, kind of like where you were when you first measured it, and wrap this around to the back and secure with some tape. If you're more comfortable, you can do it this way, whatever works. Then take that second piece of ribbon and loop it through the first and make the ends kind of match. You want them a little off so that you can tape both pieces. Pull that tight. Notice I'm supporting from the left and pulling just to create that pretty little loop rather than a knot. And for card making, I'm discovering with this bow, it doesn't create as big of a lump in your envelope, which I think is awesome. Then we take the jute. This is clever. I'm going to thread the jute onto the charm and just sort of bringing this jute through just one of those loops of ribbon and tie it on. That's all there is to it. And it just is kind of a neat way to attach this pretty charm. And I can, if you want, you can make a bow. If you want, you can bring the ends around to the back or just allow a simple single knot with ends to show. However you want to arrange that. Again, that's why this is going to be attached more to the upper portion of this card. But before we do, one other thing, one other task. So I did something kind of fun with this You've Got This. Notice I'm just freehand trimming the letters, or the words rather, out of this cut apart sheet with my scissors. 3 words here. You've got, and this. Okay. 3 tags. If you would like, you can ink everything you see here with some earth ink and whatever handy ink applicators. And then I'll take you've, and I'm going to add this word kind of to the bottom edge of the tag with the knot, with the what is that called? The hole on the left. Then we need got and this attached in the same way. Then I'll add, I have to remove those, pop out those tag punches. Then what you can do is sort of align this where you'd like it to be on the card. So that when this gets attached, it's looking good. And if you want, you can just use your adhesive to sort of trap everything like we did before. Trap everything in place where you want it, and when you stick this on, it's going to hold absolutely everything the way you want it to be. Beautiful. And now you have plenty of space with which to write something in the inside, because your sentiment ended up on the outside of this beautiful card. The remaining cards in this set, let's see, this is the original that we did together. This was the 4th one on the pile. And you can see the inked edges really do add quite a bit. And here is the second one of its kind. And this time I used that tan or brown cotton ribbon and tied the charm on in the same way. Here is the other one where instead of tucking them, I actually threaded the tag through the canvas ribbon and tied it to the back, or secured it at the back. Then I distributed these and put adhesive on the back of each one to hold them where I wanted. I actually used our foam adhesive circles to attach that. Lastly, I took some jute and tied a bow onto the top of the charm, and I adhered this with our bookbinding glue. If you haven't used that glue before, it works really, really well for attaching metal to paper, paper to paper, plastic to paper. It's just a good all-purpose adhesive. Some people have said they've used it for shoe repair, so it really goes a long way. This is the one where I forgot to put the horizontal anchoring strip in, and I don't really miss it. Maybe I added it to the inside. No. Okay, those are the cards in set C. I hope you love these. I think they're just really useful. It's not always a happy occasion for which we're sending cards to one another, so I have a lot of friends that need this card coming their way, especially right now. So I hope this serves you well and that you enjoyed making these beauties. If you like this renewal theme, we do have a page kit that makes some gorgeous layouts that you might want to use for just your experiences in 2020. I'll see you next time.